Welcome back to the DSR channel. I'm going over everything in the new book that just came out 2 days ago, Eberron, Forge of the Artificer. And today I'm covering Dragonmarks and Feats. I'm going to go over the mechanics here. But even though this is going to be, I'm going to be focusing on the mechanics. The art is super important, right? And as we've seen with, all of these books that have come out in the last month, and even the digital download books, the mechanics can be a bit of a mixed bag, and frankly, that's always the case. It's super hard to balance everything to be, equal. So it's kind of always going to be kind of a bit of a mixed bag. But the art is great. I really appreciate the focus they're putting on the art, the effort they're putting into the art, and the resources they're putting into the art. Because, and like I've said before, as a mechanics person, where I'm just, naturally good at the mechanics, drawn to that. You can't ignore the role play, right? If you ignore the role play, you're just not going to have as much fun with D&D. I pretty much guarantee, okay? Like I've had a lot of mechanics optimizers come in and play with me, and I kind of push them to role play, and then they have a great time. They're like, wow, that was more fun than I've had before. Yeah, because you role played. It's not because I'm awesome, it's because you role played. Uh, okay, so I don't know. I don't think anybody ever convinced me that role play is not really important, but also mechanics, right? Both need to be good enough, okay? It's the name of the game for this. The art is so important and so helpful for we mechanical types to help inspire us and trigger, give us that spark of creativity to help us be better at roleplay, right? So thank you to all the creatives out there. You make we mechanicals, is that the right way to say it? Us mechanicals, we mechanicals better, right? We're a good team. Mechanicals, that's a weird thing to say. Mechanicals and creatives together, right? And we started this week at 1,234. My goal for this week is 2,000 subscribers, which would be amazing because the end of this week would be like 91 days since I uploaded the first video and started this channel. And I've never done anything like this before. That would just be awesome. But 1,535 already this week, which feels freaking amazing. Okay. Thank you all so much for the support and motivation. It helps a lot. And I hope you're finding value in this because that's why I'm doing it. I'm trying to add value, touch people's lives in a positive way. So thank you so much. And yeah, if you like this kind of content and want to support it, yeah, like and subscribe would really, really help. Thank you. And now that I've been able to rank every feat in the player's handbook and every feat that's now come out this year, so I'm caught up to all 2024 content. I'll see if I get to the 2014 expanded content, but all 2024 well, not all the content, all the feats. I have got those all ranked now. So I want to just kind of explain for a minute here the point of my ranking system and why it's different, right? Because what I'm trying to do is make D&D more accessible to newer players, more fun for existing players, right? By reducing the overhead, like the cognitive load, the paperwork of playing the game, of building your character, right? Well, starting with building your character and leveling up your character, right? Because that's what the feats and the classes are all about. Like really just lowering that, making it easy. And I think even really experienced players or people who are optimizers might benefit from this as well, just because it helps you as they keep adding more and more content, more feats for us to parse and understand and remember. It can be just a big load, right? I run a lot of level 21 shots, and even the optimizers, the really, really good, mechanical optimizers, and I'm pretty good at that too, right? It's just a lot when you just go right into building a level 20 character. So this can help. And the way that I envision this helping is when you go, and by the way, I had an epiphany. I don't know why I wasn't just like putting this all in a Google sheet and leaving that in the Google Drive for you all to use. But yeah, I've put it all into one Google sheet now. So instead of having these like separate PDFs and CSVs for class ranking and tier ranks and things like that, and the spells, I haven't put all the spells in here yet, but I'll get those all in here. These will just be different tabs in this Google sheet that's in my Google Drive, and you can just use it right from there. If you want it offline, you can download it as a PDF or CSV, no problem. But using it online might just be a little bit more easier, a little more accessible. And also you can filter right here. So I'll update it periodically. I'll keep when the version number changes, that means I've tweaked something in that one or added something for new content coming. I haven't updated the Artificer yet ranks, so that'll be a version 13 when I rank the Artificer base class, re-rank the Artificer base class later this week. Yeah, I should be able to do that. All right, so here's how I intend you would use this, right? And if you have ideas to make this better for what I'm trying to achieve, the goal is to make this easier for everybody, right? Reduce the paperwork of D&D. So you can get to having fun faster and better and spend less time doing paperwork. Okay, so the ranking is not at all about optimal mechanical power, right? That's a factor, but really the rankings are more like, yes, this will do what you think it does. If there's an A, it'll do that thing well, right? It'll do that thing often for you, and it'll be easy for you to use that way. Okay, so if let's say you're, want to be a tank. And by the way, this is the class ranking for tier 1, which means level 4. Okay, this is the class ranking for tier 2, which means level 10. Tier 3, level 16. Tier 4, level 20. Okay, all right, so I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail. I'll probably do it, I'll re-go through this exercise when I make build-specific videos, but the idea would be something like, you've decided you want to be a fighter, right? And you've also decided you want to play a tank role, okay? So I'm a fighter. Well, you can see fighters are only like a B in tier 1 as a tank, which is kind of an indicator to you that it's not going to be maybe super easy to tank as that, right? You might need to be aware of other feats you should take to supplement it to make you a great tank. Maybe you're one of those people who loves the multi-class, and then you want to combine it with something to make it a better tank. Really, that's just an indicator to you to say you might need to do more if you want to be an A level tank. If you want to be a really good tank all the time, you might need to do more with a fighter. Now, that doesn't mean they're always just a B, right? A lot of things change as they go into tier 2. A lot of classes change as they go into tier 2. But the way you would then use this is then say, okay, well, I'm a B. If I'm going to be a B tank and I want to figure out how to be a better tank, let's look at some feats over here. And you could say filter everything on the feats to anything that's an A or an S feat, meaning that feat will give me good tanking features. You filter that and boom, there you go. There's all the feats you might want to consider first to supplement your tanking as a tank. There you go. The goal is to try to make it easier so you don't have to read like 150 feats. You can just read, these 12 again and say like, oh, is that something I want? Is that something I want? Is that something I want? Maybe none of them is what you want, right? Maybe you're like, you know what? I don't actually want any more tanking features. I'm actually really, feel just fine with that because we have, another good frontliner in the party, and I don't need to be a strong tank, so no problem. Okay, well, maybe you want to diversify and increase your damage. So frontliners is where you get more damage. So let's circle, martial damage. So let's filter that, and you can see there's even more feats that benefit the frontliner. And the frontliner is kind of an interesting one because their job is to both deal damage and survive. So you might find things in here that are about survival, defensive features, but also damage dealing. But again, at least you're reading 22 feats to kind of look through what might be the best option for you to enhance your frontliner capability as either a damage dealer or defensive features. You're reading 22 instead of 150, right? So there you go. That's the idea. That's the idea. Let me know if I'm missing a mark and if I could do this differently or better. But that is the goal, okay? I love feedback. All right, well, here we go. So I'm going to filter this down to the book we're talking about today, which is just Eberron, Forge of the Artificer. That's the EFOTA acronym, EFOTA. And we're going to go down these, okay? Over here, I'm going to have I'm gonna try to put both these on the screen and let me know if this format is not good for you. If I'm gonna try this because I just need more screen real estate and copy and pasting these chunks onto visuals that have images on the background, which I love the art, so I kind of hurts my soul to not show those all the time, but it's just too much data. And it's going to be harder to visualize that way, I think. So let me know in the comments if you like this format, if it's, maybe better in some ways, worse in what ways, and if you have suggestions on how to do this better, right? I'm open to feedback. All right, so I'm going to try to show both these on the screen so you can see the feats we're talking about and the rankings at the same time. Over here, you can see that they, yeah, some great art, which, by the way, again, always, I love art. Evocative, inspiring, helps me. They've also got this little introduction on what dragon marks are, what it means, and it's like little lore snippets, right? These are lore teasers, okay? They're going really lore light in these books so far, and I think it's because they've already done the lore in previous books for these campaign settings, right? During the 2014 phase, but lore doesn't get necessarily outdated. It can be retconned, as we saw from fourth edition. So the way, and this actually works well for me, right? I find that learning about lore and just history of the real world, it works better for me when I encounter something in my life or present day that I'm interested in, and then I can go back and learn about the history of that thing, right? And same thing with the lore, right? If I come in here and I'm like, hey, this feat sounds cool, or why is it called Dragonmark? I can kind of go see this lore snippet and be like, interesting, okay. And then if you want to know more, which I often do, I want to go like I'll start going down a rabbit hole. You can go to those older books, the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron and Eberron Rising from the Last War. You go back and you can learn a lot more. They have lots and lots of lore in those books. Whereas the approach that doesn't work well for me would be like, here's a book with 100 pages of lore, read it. I'm going to struggle with that. I'll get 2 pages in and like fall asleep or get bored and tune out, right? But going the other way, it works really, really well for me, and maybe it does for you. But so anyway, this version, this approach to lore they're doing in these books that are basically player options works well for me. Maybe it works well for you too. But if you're wondering where the lore is, that's where it is. It's in the previous books we have for 5th edition on Eberron. Go look at those. They've got a great amount of lore. The one thing I'll say is like these dragon marks comes from the creation mythology of Eberron, which centers around 3 dragons and their conflict. And I'm going to leave it there because I'm not a lore buff at all on Eberron, and I don't want to get anything wrong and then mislead people astray. So it's related. There's a lot of things relating back to these dragons that were the creation myth of everything for Eberron. And dragon marks are some kind of manifestation of that residual power that was left over from the creation. Okay, and it can manifest on people. So that's what the dragon marks are. And there's also this Sybaris dragon mark. Sybaris was one of those 3 dragons. Eberron was one of those 3 dragons, and I forget the name of the 3rd dragon that was kind of the bad dragon. That one escapes me. Maybe I'm saying that. Correct me in the comments, please, or help me get that straight. Okay, so that's what those are. There are backgrounds, which I'm not going to. The intro to this is already way too long, so we're going to skip over backgrounds. I'll do that in another video. But let's jump forward to the feats now. Okay, so starting off, you've got these feats, and notice that these are not origin feats. Okay, all of these are tied. Most of these, all of these, every one of these are tied to a background. Okay, and so that's what I've put into the spreadsheet over here. I've listed the background that it's tied to. And these are not origin feats. They are Dragon Mark feats, which is a new category of feats that we've never had before, okay? And the only way to get this, I believe, would be to get the background. I don't know if you can take this with a general feat slot. So you might have to have the background to get this. That might be the only way. And note that they also have a prerequisite of the Eberron campaign. So you got to check with your DM if he's going to allow or she's going to allow this kind of content in your campaign. I'm going to. I allow everything from every campaign published by WotC. Now, these are in some ways a lot more powerful than other origin feats because these are kind of equivalent to origin feats, but a different category. So you cannot take these, you can't get these dragon marks with the human, bonus origin feat. You can't get these with the warlocks lessons of the old ones, right? Because these are not origin feats. They are dragon mark feats, a new category. Yeah, but I'd allow it. And I don't know. Because it's right. We got cool new content. What's the point if you don't get to use it? Use everything. All right. So let's go over the first one. Aberrant Dragonmark. This is one. So like, there's all these dragon marks that are consistent, right? There's the mark of mark of detection, mark of finding, mark of handling, and they kind of appear on everybody in a consistent way. Everybody who has that, it appears on them in a consistent way. The mark looks the same, it functions the same, and so there's kind of this general consistency of these marks and how they've influenced this world of Eberron and how it's developed. Again, the lore on this is amazing, and this is not a lore video, so I'm going to resist going into that. But then you have this concept of, well, there's some where a dragon mark, this manifestation of magical energy, doesn't show up under one of these neat categories of the other marks that they've kind of categorized and solidified for generations of time or eons of time on Eberron. So there's this aberrant one, which is it just mutated in some way, somehow, right? And that's what the aberrant dragon mark is. Okay, so this one says when you fail a Constitution saving throw, you can take a reaction to roll a 1d4 and add the number to the rolled to the save, potentially turning the failure into a success. Once you've used this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So this is right. The Herringon had something like this. The Herringon species from the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. That one allowed you to take a reaction when you failed a dexterity saving throw, take a reaction to roll a d4 and add it, but it had no resource limitation. You could just always do it. Uh, and that one was pretty good. I wouldn't call that overpowered in any way. And so it is a bummer, I think, to see this one that says it's limited to once per long rest. That really hinders this and turns it from something that would have been pretty cool and interesting to something that's really quite weak because it's just a single usage. Now, when you're concentrating on that really, really important, spell, and you fail the Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration, and you really, really need to do it, like maybe you're in the middle of melee and you've got haste on yourself, and if you lose haste, you're like lose all your actions for one turn, and your movement drops to 0. You have that lethargy that sets in, so you can't lose that, or you're going to get wrecked. Yeah, in those moments, this is going to be the great thing that saves you. It's just once per long rest is super super weak. Even if it was without limit, I don't think this would be overpowered because you just start getting a lot of contention for your reactions. Like you're a blade singer, you got haste on yourself. Well, you might want to just keep your reaction for shield, right? Like a lot of times shield is going to be better or absorb elements is going to be better than taking this reaction. So there's just so much reaction contention. That alone is a good enough limiter to control it, in my opinion. So that was unnecessary, but it is what it is. So for that, I give it a C and survivability. And remember, I'm ranking this against other Dragonmark feats and other Origin feats. If this were on a general feat, I would probably give it a D for survivability, for example. All right, next feature, Aberrant Magic. You know one cantrip of your choice from the Sorcerer spell list and one first level spell from the Sorcerer spell list. You always have them prepared. You can cast the first level spell without a spell slot. You regain it when you finish a short or long rest, not just a long rest, so it's a little bit more frequent than the normal like magic initiate type thing. Uh, Constitution is your spellcasting modifier for this, which is usually not anyone's primary ability score, right? This is usually, but it's usually not a dump stat either. You're probably gonna have a +1 or +2 modifier on that, but it's not going to be your +3 or +4, +5. At least not in tier 1 and tier 2. Usually, right? Maybe you're a tank and there's a sorcerer spell you really want to have as a tank, and so you pump up your constitution, and now this thing is pumped up as well. There you go. That's pretty good. Okay, it's actually pretty good. It's like sorcerer magic initiate, but you get to use it more often, which is a big deal. Aberrant Surge. When you cast the level 1 spell from this feat, you can expend one of your hit dice and roll it. If you roll an even, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the number rolled. If you roll an odd, one creature within 30 feet of you, not including you, takes force damage equal to the number rolled. If no other creatures are in range, you take the damage. So it doesn't specify, it doesn't say you choose, but it doesn't say random. It used to say random. So I think as long as there is a creature in range, you can choose. And if there are multiple creatures in range, you choose. And if there's not one in range, you don't choose, it's you. But if there are only allies in range, then it's one of them. So, yeah. I mean, it's not going to be a lot. We're talking, one hit die worth roll of potential temporary hit points for you, or one hit die worth of force damage to this creature. It's a weird thing. Slightly helpful, slightly damage increase. And remember, this is not adding that damage, that force damage, to your spell in any way. It has nothing to do with your spell. It's just triggered by your spell. So in that way, it's a lot like the Spellfire Sorcery Sorcerer's damage feature, where when you spend a sorcery point, you can just roll a d4 and deal that radiant damage to anybody. This is like that, okay? It's just you roll the hit die and potentially either give yourself temporary hit points or deal damage to a creature. And it's a single target, so it boosts. It's a source of a little bit of single target damage, but it's only when you cast the first level spell from the feat. Now, it doesn't say you have to. It's only limited to when you can't use the free casting of the first level spell from this feat. So it would be whenever you use that spell. So if you choose shield, you could always be shielding yourself and potentially giving yourself temporary hit points and damaging somebody every time you shield. And right? Everybody wants to shield. Shield's a good spell. You shield all the time. So now you're adding a little damage to your shield. That's pretty good combo. All right, so I give this an A for tank, A for front, like A for most of these roles, only a C for blaster and controller, because there just aren't really like the best control spell on the sorcerer spell list at level 1 is Sleep, which is actually like an A tier spell when you're levels 1 and 2. When you get to levels 3 and 4, it's like a B, and by level 5, it's a C. It starts to drop off. So I'm going to give it overall a C because the Sleep spell drops off pretty fast. But, you know, at level 1, it's quite good. You can't, it doesn't say you can change the spell when you gain a level, which is unfortunate. As a DM, I would allow it to just change anyway when you level up, just because, you know, it's not great to cause feel bad moments. Somebody's stuck with something on their character sheet that doesn't work for them anymore. It didn't work the way they wanted to. I'm pretty lenient with that kind of stuff. A for healer and support, B for scout and face, just because there are some spells at first level that can help with scout and face. They're just not super strong spells and they fall off. So, but this is great overall, right? And like I said, that spell gets to be used once per short rest, not once per long rest, which is better than Magic Initiate in that way. So this definitely is a contender with Magic Initiate as a, you know, better in some ways, worse in some ways, strong pick. Okay. Mark of Detection. Here we go. That's this one. Okay, now these ones I had to get a little creative and give them two separate rankings because every one of these Dragonmark mark feats that are the kind of equivalent of origin feats, they have a section called Spells of the Mark that only applies if you're a spellcaster or have the Pack Magic feature, right? You got to have spellcasting or Pack Magic. And so if you're a spellcaster, this feat is very different from you. And if you're not a spellcaster, then you only get the first feat. So that's what this is. The first row is if you're not a spellcaster. And the second row with the S for spellcaster is if you are a spellcaster, this is how I would rank that for you. Okay. And I just did that with all of them. I couldn't think of a better way to do that without making it just way, I don't know. I just couldn't think of a better way to do it. So this is what we got. So Mark of Detection, again, has all the same prerequisites. It's tied to a background called the House of Madani Air. All of them have kind of a similar setup, right? There is the first feature that boosts some ability checks, right? And each one is different, which it's just different on which ability checks it boosts, but they all give a D4, okay? So I'm just going to kind of address them lightly like that going forward so that this video isn't like 2 hours long. We're pretty long into it already. Okay, so this one is going to boost intelligence investigation checks and wisdom insight checks. And you add a D4 every time. There's no limit. It's not limited to once per turn. It's not limited in any way. Every time you make that check, you get this boost. Now, once per turn, probably not going to matter very much for many of these ability checks. It's not very often that you're making multiple ability checks in one turn, but you could during combat if you're jumping over things and running across ice. Okay, but probably not these ones. So that's solid. I give it a C for scouting and face. That boost is good, but this, you know, if this were say plus 1d4 on every charisma check and insight, that's an A for face, right? Because those are all the face type ability checks. This is just one of them, and it's one of the more limited ones, right? Insight is important as face, but it's not the most important thing. Like persuasion is, frankly, if you had one skill that you wanted to boost for the face roll, persuasion is it. All the rest are kind of secondary. And investigation is important for scouting, right? That's how you figure out that the wall that looks off is a trap, or the chest that's got a weird thing sticking out is a poison dart. But it's not the primary thing that you need for scouting. So I give it a C on both of those. And because it doesn't give you proficiency with it, it's just a 1d4 that you add to it. So mileage varies. You could certainly like optimize around that, and then this boost is more like an A for you if you're optimizing around it. But I give it a C just because it's not generally a strong thing all the time for that specific role, right? That's what an A would mean. If an A would mean, hey, I didn't have this feature, now I have this feature, and it's really strong for me, and it's going to make me suddenly great at these things, and that is not this, okay? Then you have magical detection. So this section always has some spells you can cast. Sometimes there's like another option that isn't a spell, but they always have some spells. And these spells, you always have them prepared. You can always cast them once per long rest. You can choose your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma for all of them. And sometimes there's like at a level 3, you gain an additional spell you can use or an additional ability you can use. So in this case, Mark of Detection gives you detect magic, detect poison and disease, and see invisibility, which are not super strong spells, but getting 3 spells you can cast. So 3 spells prepared on your spell list, one of them being a second level spell, always prepared on your spell list, and a free casting of each of those, whether or not you're a spellcaster, for an origin feat is quite strong. So I'm going to give it an A for versatility because these are all kind of like the knowledge gathering things. Seeing visibility is niche. It's important when you need it, but a lot of times you don't need it. So I'm putting that. I put that in the versatility category as well. So yeah, I give it an A for versatility, which is strong. Now let's move down to this section here called Spells of the Mark. And this is the section that said that only applies if you're a spellcaster. Okay. And the way it works is these spells are added to your spell list. They're not automatically prepared for you. Okay. So if you don't have these spells on your spell list, like you're a cleric, okay, and you're not a knowledge domain cleric. So you're a cleric, I don't know, forge cleric, and you don't have identify on your spell list. So you can't prepare that. If you have this background that gives you this Dragonmark feat to start off with, identify is now on your spell list. You can choose to prepare it, but if you don't choose to prepare it, you can't use it, right? It's not automatically prepared for you. It's just on your spell list. Okay. And that's a lot of spells to suddenly add to your spell list. I give every one of these, if you're a spellcaster, every one of these is an A in a different way for you, but they're all an A because just adding things to your spell list that you didn't have access to before is quite powerful. Now, keep in mind, like if you were a wizard, wizard has almost all of these that matter. Like find traps doesn't matter. But a wizard has access to all of these except find traps. Okay, so if you're a wizard and you pick this one, it's not an A for you. So you got to at least there's some caveats. You have to pay attention to that because wizards already have all this. So keep that in mind. All right, make sure you're planning ahead for that. But yeah, this is an A for scouting because it gives you at once you get fourth level spell slots, Arcane Eye. And that is super strong for scouting, right? And getting that from the equivalent of your origin feat is amazing. And every one of these do have that table like that. So every one of these is amazing relative to origin feats. So that's the theme here. Mark of Finding. It's going to boost your wisdom, perception, and survival checks, which is great. You get the Hunter's Mark spell, which is very good. And you get Locate Object when you're level 3, which is great for people who are good about gaining information and leveraging it in creative ways to solve challenges. So if you're not a spellcaster, I give this an A for Frontliner, Skirmisher, and Ranged, an A for Scout, a C for Survival, an A for Versatility. Remember, C doesn't mean it's bad at survival. It just gives you a little bit of survival in that category, okay? So I would not say, oh, this is a C ranked thing. Maybe I don't want it. What you should be thinking is, I'm getting boosts in all of these areas, in all of these kinds of roles, and also a C level boost alongside all of that on this feat for survival. Okay. Now going down to the Mark of Finding spells that are added to your spell list, not your spells prepared. You get Fairy Fire, Longstrider, Locate Animal and Plants, Mind Spike, Clairvoyance, Speak with Plants, Divination, Locate Creature, Commune with Nature. All of these are pretty good and useful especially if you're that kind of character who's good at gaining information and leveraging it in creative ways to help. This is excellent for you. So I give it an A for versatility and all those kind of things, and I add an A for support because of Fairy Fire and Longstrider, which are great support spells. Yeah, this is just amazing that a origin equivalent feat is adding all of these things to your spell list. So pretty good. Mark of Handling. You boost your intelligence nature checks and wisdom animal handling checks. Intelligence nature is pretty common. Those come up a lot. Well, depends on your DM, right? Always talk to your DM about how they handle ability checks and which ones they use. I call for nature checks all the time. So that one's great. Animal handling is still one of the more rare ones, even for me, but it really is driven by the characters and not by something the DM am initiating. So that one ends up being more rare just because players don't attempt to influence animals. But so it could be beneficial. That's kind of a face function for a certain category of creatures that you're facing, right? Beasts. The spells you get prepared are Animal Friendship and Speak with Animals. You can cast each one same as you can with all these other spells, all these other Dragonmark feats. And then when you reach level 3, you don't gain a new spell, which you gain as a new feature, which means, and the feature is that your Animal Friendship and Speak with Animals can now target monstrosities, not just beasts. And beasts is a very small subset of monsters, but monstrosities are a huge category. Now, it has to be a monstrosity with 3 or lower intelligence, but there's still quite a lot of these. So that is actually a very interesting buff to this, and I like it. It's not strong, but it is going to be unique and useful and interesting, okay? If you are that kind of player who tries to, interact, have a social encounter with monstrosities and beasts instead of just kill them. So if you're not a murder hobo, this is maybe an A. If you are a murder hobo, this is probably a C or a D. Okay. Um, but animal friendship is basically charm animal. Okay. So this can circumvent combats, even if you're a murder hobo. I mean, if you're a murder hobo, you're trying to kill the monsters anyway. Let's say you're prone to combat, but not a murder hobo, then you charm the monstrosities and beasts instead of having a combat, and you circumvent the combat. And by the way, as a DM, if they circumvent combat that way, you should still give them the experience for the combat, right? Don't restrict experience to just be you killed the thing. If you made it run away or you bypass the encounter, you still overcame the challenge, you get the experience, okay? DMs, yes, your behavior can cause cause the players to be murder hobos, right? If you only reward them for killing the creatures, you're incentivizing being a murder hobo. It's your fault too. All right. The spellcasting list. These spells that are added to your spell list: Command, Find Familiar, Beast Sense, Calm Emotions, Beacon of Hope, Conjure Animals, Aura of Life, Dominate Beast, Awaken. These are amazing. These are like bangers. Okay. Like the base functionality of this Dragonmark feat is okay. I give it B for controller, B for face, a B for versatility. These spells, though, Command is one of the best. One of the best non-concentration control spells, right? And not everybody has it on their spell list. So, like a wizard wanting to get, like, a wizard might want to do this, even though they already have Find Familiar. Take this Dragonmark just so they can get Command, which is fantastic. Conjure Animals, fantastic blaster spell. All right, amazing. Like this is a really strong list to add to anybody's spell list if you don't already have them. But this is such an eclectic mix that I don't think any of these, like all of these, do not appear on anyone's entire spell list. So this is a benefit to any spellcaster. This one is strong. An A for blaster, controller, healer, an A for scout, a B for face, a B for versatility because that is cumulative. And the healer function is really like your beacon of hope, calm emotions, and aura of life, right? So these are some good healing spells. This one's solid, as are all of these Dragonmark ones. All of these Dragonmark ones are good. Mark of Healing. You're going to boost wisdom medicine checks and checks with the herbalism kit. I don't think I've ever called for a check on an herbalism kit. It could happen. It's pretty rare. And wisdom medicine is another one that's driven by player decisions, not by the DM. So that one tends to be rare. It's only when they try to say like, oh, there's a dead body. How old is it? And that's when the most medicine checks happen that I've called for. But it is driven by players. So players who are creative about figuring things out might be able to leverage this way more than what I've seen. And DMs who rarely call for ability checks, this would be a lot less. So mileage varies as is always the case with ability checks. But I encourage DMs, call for them a lot, make it matter, make it meaningful. The players are going to have more fun. All right, the spell you get is Cure Wounds, and you can cast it once per long rest, same as all the others. You also get Lesser Restoration at level 3, and Lesser Restoration it got buffed. It's a really good healing spell now. It's a bonus action to cast. And that's a big change, but that alone made it a much better spell. It's now viable to cast that in the middle of combat instead of spending your whole action just casting that. And if one of your allies is poisoned, that's crippling to them, so it's great to put Lesser Restoration on them. So this one is an A if you're not a spellcaster, right? A for healer, C for some versatility from those skill buffs, all right? Spells of the Mark, added to your spell list, not prepared. You get False Life, Healing Word, Arcane Vigor, Prayer of Healing, Aura of Vitality, Mass Healing Word, Aura of Life, Aura of Purity, Greater Restoration. Okay, and remember, you also have Cure Wounds and Lesser Restoration prepared, right? Those are always prepared as well. And they're not just on your list, they're always prepared because of the feature above. So, if you just take this, anyone's a healer, right? The wizard can be a healer, the sorcerer can be a healer, the warlock can be a healer without taking the celestial warlock, subclass. It's like you're a healer, Harry. So you're not just a wizard, you're also a healer. Fantastic. Like this is you get the whole healer package except Revivify. And with this kind of package, you might not need Revivify or miss it. Right? You got Aura Vitality, Mass Healing. Like this is just everything. This one's so good. Yeah, you're an A-level healer now, regardless of what as long as you're a full spellcaster, you're an A-level healer. Just bam. Amazing. Okay, now I wouldn't take this if you're a cleric or druid. Maybe as a druid, right? Yeah, you don't. Yeah, maybe as a druid and a bard. I wouldn't take this on a bard because you get magical secrets. You can cherry pick these anyway after level 10. I would definitely do this I would do this as a druid, probably not as a cleric, probably not as a bard, but yes, as a sorcerer and a wizard. If you want to like play a wizard, which is great, right? Because sometimes you want to play a wizard, but nobody in the party wants to be a healer, right? And that's kind of a feel bad that some of these, if the party, you guys discuss it and somebody in the party really needs to be a healer because whatever your party composition, you're going to have a healer. Instead of forcing somebody to switch to a class they didn't want to play, they could still be a wizard and whatever subclass they want to be. You could be an evoker wizard, do this as your background, and now you're also a full healer. So you're an evoker, blaster, wizard, healer. Great options. I love it. Crazy powerful. Mark of Hospitality. You're going to boost your charisma persuasion checks. That is one of the most important ones to boost. That is the most important one to boost if you're in the face roll, or ability checks using brewer's supplies or cook's utensils. I have never called for a check with brewer supplies or cook's utensils. I don't think. It could happen, but that's going to be driven by players. So, yeah, creative players will get more mileage out of that. The spells you get are Purify Food and Drink and Unseen Servant. You always have them prepared. And remember, both of those are rituals, and they change the rules. So as long as you have the spell prepared, you can also cast it as a ritual no matter what. You don't need a special ritual casting feature. So you can ritual cast those, which helps them a lot because those are not very good spells. I mean, Unseen Servant's pretty good. Purified Food and Drink, super rare. Level 3, you can cast Calm Emotions, which is a strong healer spell. Okay, and those 3 are always prepared on your spell list. So that's nice. I give this an A for controller. Yeah, an A for controller because Calm Emotions can be a control spell as well. An A for face because Calm Emotions helps with that and the persuasion check. And then a C for versatility. Moving on to the Mark of Hospitality spell list, or spells of the Mark that are added to your spell list, not prepared. You got Goodberry, Sleep, Aid, Enhance Ability, Create Food and Water, Leoman's Tiny Hut, Aura of Purity, Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum, and Hallow. That is a banger list. Just amazing. Goodberry, strong. Sleep is a great control spell at levels 1 and 2. Decent at levels higher than that. Aid, very strong support and healer spell. Enhance Ability, amazing. That's like one of the best spells for boosting any ability checks, right? For an hour, right? And you cast it on yourself. So you're going into a social encounter, cast this on yourself. You have advantage on all charisma checks for the whole social encounter. Amazing. I don't know why people don't use it more often. Leomanstein Hut, trivialized long rest. You could long rest in the middle of a dangerous forest, and they can't do anything about it. They're just gonna be standing there dancing around your bubble, and maybe they're just waiting for it to end, like not Darth Maul, Obi-Wan during the Battle of the Fates in Episode 1, where he's just like waiting for that thing to come down. They're gonna be like that, but they're not gonna interrupt your long rest. It's like basically a guaranteed long rest. I think Dispel Magic might take it down. Or Purity is good. Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum is another rest booster. Hallow is strong if you got 24 hours. Even if you're just going to protect your own bastions and things like that, Hallow is great. So that's another strong list. A for healer, support, scout added to it as the cumulative score is another good one. Mark of Making. We're going to boost Arcana checks, Intelligence Arcana checks, and any ability check with an Artisan tool. I've never called for an ability check with an Artisan tool. It would need to be player driven, I think, initiated. So we'll see. But Arcana is super useful. Almost every combat encounter starts with an Arcana check for me because I allow as soon as they spot a creature, I allow them to make a free check to see if they recognize what it is, right? Which just makes sense. Like you fought orcs before, that's an orc, right? And making these knowledge checks is a good way to simulate that, right? Because that way you don't have to remember, like, have you or if you're playing a campaign, you don't have to remember every single encounter you've ever had for the last year that you've been playing. You can just roll and say, okay, yeah, that means you've recognized that creature. Or if you're just doing a one shot at high levels, right? How do you simulate that? You don't have this past of what they've actually fought. So you just roll the knowledge check, and if they roll high enough, they've recognized that creature. Okay. And, go look at my knowledge skills video where I give recommendations on how to leverage this and using the information right out of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, how to make knowledge skills really valuable. So this one's great. I give it an A for versatility. But the mending cantrip, which is less useful now, unfortunately, like it was great for artificers because they could repair their constructs with it, and now you can't, which I'm bummed about. You can still repair the Eldritch Cannon with it. That's it. You also get the magic weapon spell prepared, and you can cast it once per long rest. Works the same as all the others. Magic weapon is one that's like, it's no longer super important anymore because they removed the whole concept of monsters having resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Like that's just gone. So you no longer desperately need a magic weapon to overcome that. So now it's just a +1 to your attack rolls and damage rolls, and if you upcast it, it can be a +2 or a +3. So it's nice. It would be better if it's stacked, right? You can't put it on magic items, so it doesn't stack. You can't even put it on like a flame tongue that doesn't give you a bonus attack and damage. It's just 2d6 fire damage. At least let us put it on that, on those kinds of magic weapons, right? A weapon of warning, let us put it on that. So you have this boost. Anyway, you can't put it on any of those rules as written, which really hampers the value of magic weapon. So I give it like a C for support because you can put that on other people's, weapons. And in tier 1, it can be useful because you probably won't have a +1 weapon. So that's a boost you wouldn't otherwise have. But once you have a +1 weapon, it's not worth it to upcast that to like carry around your +1 weapon and also have a backup non-magical weapon, and you can upcast magic weapon on that to make that a +2 sometimes. I don't know. It's a lot to go through for a single net +1 on your attacks and damage, but it can be useful. So I give that at least a C. Mending Cantrip, if you're creative, can be quite useful. If you're not creative with the usage, you're probably never going to cast it. So let's move on to the marks, the spells of the mark. Okay, you get Identify, Tensor's Floating Disc, Continual Flame, Spiritual Weapon, Conjure Barrage, Elemental Weapon, Fabricate, Stone Shape, and Creation. These are all quite good. I mean, Elemental or Spiritual Weapon and Conjure Barrage are really strong for anybody, right? And Conjure Barrage is especially good, right? Conjure Barrage is almost as much damage as Fireball, but only Rangers have it. And it's a 3rd level spell, so Rangers wouldn't even get it until level 9, and casting something that's like does about 25 to 28 points of damage at level 9 is a lot less useful. But if you're a wizard and take this and you're casting Conjure Barrage at level 5, you're doing a lot of damage, and it's a giant cone, but it doesn't have friendly fire. So you don't even have to be an Evoker Wizard anymore to remove friendly fire from your Fireball. You can just cast Conjure Barrage repeatedly, and it automatically doesn't have friendly fire. And it's force damage instead of fire damage, which is better than Fireball. So this would be a great way to go for wizards, even though you already have Identify and Tensor's Floating Disc and Continual Flame and Elemental Weapon. You have a lot of these. You might just do this just so you can have Conjure Barrage and be blasting people with that. It doesn't matter where your front line is. You just blast the whole room and avoid friendly fire. This is super good. I give it an A for range single target damage dealers, an A for blasters at all levels, C for support, and A for versatility. It's another good one. They're all good. They're all good. Mark of Passage. All right, this one's going to boost your strength athletics checks and dexterity acrobatics checks, so you're going to be very athletic now. Okay, great. Those can be used during combat. I call for them whenever anybody wants to like bypass the difficult terrain of like climbing over a table. I can let you make an athletics or acrobatics check to just like parkour over it with no movement cost, and I just make the DC like 10. And if you fail it, you hit the table and fall prone. If you succeed, then you jump it, and it's not even difficult terrain. Great way to give players options, and I don't require that action economy for that as well. It's a free check. So those are okay, but don't miss out. Don't miss this part. Your speed increases by 5 feet. Yep. Wow. Bazinga. Yeah. Almost skipped right over that one. So that's quite useful. And you get the Misty Step spell. You don't get a 1st level spell, but at level 1, you have Misty Step. Nobody else has that. Just a level 2 spell. That's amazing. Okay, so this is a solid for self buff, survival, versatility. Misty Step is super versatile, and not just for the versatility category, right? It's versatile for movement, versatile for getting further to where you need to be. Like frontliners and tanks could want this. It's good for getting out of combat for survival. It's good for chasing somebody down who's trying to run away from you. It's good for like teleporting through portcullises when you can't reach the other side. It's good for like teleporting up to higher elevations you can't reach. Yeah, it's so useful. All right, okay, awesome. Spells of the Mark. You get Expeditious Retreat, Jump, Find Steed. Wow. And Find Steed got a lot better. So that's amazing. Pass Without Trace, amazing. Blink is pretty good. Phantom Steed, amazing. Dimension Door, amazing. Freedom of Movement, okay. Teleportation Circle, amazing. So this is such a strong spell list. Don't think that since it has fewer A's and fewer it's all A's, so I add an A for support and an A for scout for this. But don't think that since it has fewer categories, it's less powerful. This is very powerful. It's just in a smaller subset of categories. So this is amazing. And I give it versatility for the movement capabilities, right? Which everybody is interested in. Okay, like tanks would benefit from Find Steed so much, right? Frontliners will benefit from it. Skirmishers will benefit from. Like everybody benefits from having a mount and having more movement. So if you're a spellcaster, this is yet another amazing, amazing origin equivalent feat. Mark of Scribing. You're going to boost history checks and ability checks using clear supplies. Mileage varies. Watch my knowledge skills video. You're going to learn the message cantrip. You get comprehend languages, always prepared, and at level 3 you get magic mouth. If you're not a spellcaster, I probably wouldn't take this one. I think this one is weak overall. It's probably the weakest of all the Dragonmark feats. If you're not a spellcaster, okay? Like message is useful when you're scouting, and the way to use it when you're scouting is not that the scout casts message, because that will break your hidden state, right? It has a verbal spell component. The way you use it is the wizard or whoever's back with a party who has message, they cast message every round. They send the message to the scout, and the scout can reply silently. So just keep casting it every round, and now you have the equivalent of telepathy with 120-foot range to the scout, and their hidden state is maintained, right? That's how you use message for scouting. So it works well. Comprehend languages, it's easy to get. It's a ritual, so getting a free casting of it doesn't really matter. Magic mouth, I know there's people like, oh, I did some really, really creative, cool things with it. Great. I hear about those. I've never, ever seen anybody ever cast Magic Mouth in game. Like, never once seen a player do it. Never. So, yeah, it's like a D for versatility, a C for face, because, comprehend languages so you can, like, understand when somebody's trying to talk to you, and a C for scouting. I don't recommend this one if you are not a spellcaster. But if you are a spellcaster, the Mark of Scribing spells is another solid list. Command, very good control spell. Silence, good control spell if you can keep them in the area. Sending, excellent for communication long range. Tongues, even better than comprehend languages because now it's two-way speaking. Arcane Eye, awesome for scouting. Really strong scouting spell. Confusion, strong control spell. And Dream, kind of a weird plot device spell. But just command, silence, sending, tongues, arcane eye, and confusion, like you get some really solid spells on this list. So this is an A for multiple categories: controller, scout, face, versatility. Mark of Sentinel. You're going to boost your wisdom, insight, and perception checks. Both great. Perception, probably the most used. Insight, very commonly used. So that's great. You get the shield spell, like literally the best level 1 spell in the game. So amazing. Now that's not better than like Magic Initiate, because you can take Magic Initiate Wizard and get the shield spell too, right? So this is not better than that yet. All right. You also get Vigilant Guardian. When a creature within 5 feet of you hits you with an attack, is hit with an attack roll, you can swap places with it using your reaction, and then you take the attack instead. Now it automatically hits you. It's not like the attack roll is just used against your AC. It just auto hits you, which I think is a miss. They should have said the attack roll just is now used against your AC, which means it could just miss. And that would have made this way more interesting and valuable, because like maybe the wizard got stuck in combat and he's going to be hit, and then all of a sudden you jump in front of him and he would have taken a bunch of damage, but you jumped in front, you're wearing plate armor, and now it just bounces off you. More evocative, more interesting, more useful. As it is, that's kind of weak. Yeah, kind of weak. So an A for survival, just because shield is a great spell. C for face. C for face. C for tanking, because it is a tanking feature to be able to do that swap. There are better tanking features, but spells of the mark. Here we go. Compelled duel. That is a better tanking feature than the swap places thing. So nice. Shield of Faith, great. Boost your AC by 2. Really strong. Warding Bond, Zone of Truth, Counterspell, Protection from Energy, Death Ward, Guardian of Faith, Bigby's Hand. There are some bangers here. If you're a spellcaster, awesome list, okay? A for tanking, A for ranged damage dealers, A for controller, A for support, C for face, A for survival. All right, we're going to boost Dexterity Stealth and Charisma Performance checks, which is great. Stealth, very easy to use, makes sense, good to have. And Charisma Performance, I call for performance checks all the time, even in combat, right? That one is used a lot, and it adds a ton of roleplay fun. I love that one. If your DM never calls for it, which there's a lot of them, mileage varies, right? I encourage DMs to try, like, stretch yourself to try to use all of the skills more often, call for them more often, like find ways to call for them more often. The players are going to love it. Okay. With the spells, you're going to get Minor Illusion and Invisibility. They're always prepared. You get to cast them once per long rest, which is nice, decent. I do like the minor illusion spell. Creative players get a lot of mileage out of it, and visibility is straightforward and easy to use. So I give Marcus Shadow an A for scout, a B for face, and an A for versatility. Again, that's all dependent on how often your DM uses skill checks, ability checks, but spells of the mark. You're going to have added to your spell list Disguise Self, Silent Image, Darkness, Pass Without Trace, Clairvoyance, Major Image, Greater Invisibility, Hallucinatory Terrain, and Mislead. These are awesome, right? Not every single one of these is great, but these are really, really good. It's so good to be able to add all of these to your spell list. I made a dream druid once, and I wanted to lean into kind of the dream idea and I took this so that I could have like the illusion spells, which just felt very thematic for a dream druid. And I wasn't super powerful, but I loved that character. It was so fun to play, and it was just a lot of great role play, leveraging being a druid, casting all these illusions, which also was just like unexpected. The rest of the party's like, "What? You have all these illusions?" Like, yeah. And I flavored everything as being like dreaming, so it was cool. All right, strong spell list: A for controller, A for support, A for scout, face, and versatility. Mark of Storm. All right, we're going to boost dexterity, acrobatics, and checks with the navigator's tools. And I call for a lot of checks with navigator's tools, so that's great. This is pretty good. All right, you're going to get for spells Thunderclap and Gust of Wind, but you only get Gust of Wind at 3rd level, which is strange, but I guess it's because you get resistance to lightning damage from this one. This is the only one that gives you a damage resistance, and lightning is not one of the more common damage types you're going to take, but it's not never going to happen. It'll happen, and that's going to feel great, right? Pretty good to get a damage resistance on an origin equivalent feat. Thunderclap is an okay spell. Um, you definitely want to be a frontliner if you're going to run in the middle of melee and cast Thunderclap. At level in tier 1, probably not worth your action because it's just 1d6 damage. But as it scales up, maybe it was worthwhile. You're a frontliner, you run into you're in tier 4 and there's just a room full of all these minions. Just run in the middle of the minions, Thunderclap, kill 9 of them, kill 8 of them at once. Cool. Gust of Wind, not a great spell. It's got some control functionality. It gets better later though. So if you're not a spellcaster, I'd say this is a D for a blaster, a C for control, an A for survival, and a C for versatility. Yeah, it's okay. Spells of the mark. You get Featherfall, Fog Cloud, Levitate, Shatter, Sleet Storm, Wind Wall, Conjure Minor Elementals. Yeah. Control Water and Conjure Elemental. So the list kind of starts off not as great. I mean, Fog Cloud is great. Featherfall is great when you fall, but just doesn't happen that often. It's like a few times a campaign. It's not, I don't know. It just doesn't happen that often. It depends on how your DM runs traps. Levitate is a great control spell that I think a lot of people pass on because it's like a single target. Like, oh, well, I can Tasha's Cauldron or Tasha's Hideous Laughter and hit multiple of them. The difference with Levitate is if the creature doesn't have a ranged attack, you can lift it off the ground and now it can't attack. And then you can just shoot it because shooting it doesn't end the Levitate. It doesn't give it a resave or anything. They get a resave. They never get a resave. So just lift them off the ground and just be blasting them. Just shoot them, take arrows, throw rocks until they die and they can't do anything. Whereas with like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, if you hit them, it ends. So, or they get a resave if you hit them. Shatter is an okay blast spell. Like there's some good stuff on this list. So I give this one, if you're a spellcaster, A is a frontliner, A is a skirmisher, A is a blaster, A is a controller, A for survival, C for versatility overall. Mark of Warding. We're going to boost our intelligence investigation checks and any ability check with thieves tools, which those happen all the time. Like that's the trap stuff. That's the trap package. Figuring out traps and disarming them. That's good. Wards and seals. These are the spells you're going to get Alarm and Mage Armor. And then at 3rd level, you get Arcane Lock. Alarm is one that like helps so you don't get ambushed during a long rest. It lasts the 8 hours, and you can cast it ritually. I mean, I guess if you're only gonna do it once per day, you got the one free casting anyway, so you don't need to do it ritually. I don't know. Circumstantial, like people can just be on watch to prevent that, but yeah, this would help. Mage Armor is only good if you're not going to wear armor, if you don't have any armor training. Yeah, it's okay if you. Here's the problem. It's good when you need it, and if you need it, you already have access to it, right? But I guess if you don't want to like spend a spell slot on it, there you go. Arcane Lock is okay. It's not as good as Knock. Like Knock opens the door, Arcane Lock locks the door. if you're a creative player, like in the middle of combat, you've got the monsters, like the combat is split between two rooms, and the monsters are like half in this room and half in your room, and all of your allies in this room. And you run up, close the door, and lock it. Now the other monsters are stuck on the other side, and you just split the combat in two. Like you only have to face half as many monsters per combat. Um, that's a great usage of it. There's other good ways to use it. Like you're being chased, I guess, right? And people are following you. You can arcane lock doors behind you and stop them. But it is highly reliant on a creative player and certain situations, right? And those situations do not come up all the time. So, it's a pretty circumstantial spell. This is not one. I mean, the whole package is an A for scouting and an A for survival as a whole package, right? Like you got to be kind of creative with stuff. All right, the spells of the mark. You're going to get Armor of Agathis, Sanctuary, Knock. There's Knock. Nistel's Magic Aura, Glyph of Warding, Magic Circle, Leoman's Secret Chest, Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, and Anti-Life Shell. Armor of Agathis on its own is worth taking this for, right? Just that. Like this whole thing, if you're a spellcaster, Armor of Agathis is worth taking just for that. Bonus action cast, 5 temporary hit points for every level of spell slot you use to cast it. It's great. Plus, everything else on this list is just gravy. It's a lot of kind of creative use, versatile type stuff. Sanctuary is nice to if you ever played any of those MMOs where the non-tanking characters, would often have these things called aggro dumps, right? They'd have an aggro dump ability. Like you've done too much damage and you're starting to pull aggro off the tank and get in trouble. If you get hit by the monster, you're just dead. So you want to aggro dump. Like Sanctuary is an aggro dump, right? Now, you could cast this on yourself to aggro dump yourself because they just have a harder time targeting you, and they would be aware of that as soon as they try to target you. But you can also put this on other allies. So it's got some great support functionality. Nistel's Magic Aura has got a pretty cool, interesting effect that they added in 20. It didn't used to have in previous versions of the game, and they made it a little more clear in 2024. You can use it to change your creature type as far as magic is concerned, right? So you're a humanoid, and you're still a humanoid, but you could change with casting it for 30 days straight, permanently change your creature type to undead as far as magic is concerned. So hold person wouldn't work on you anymore, and charm person wouldn't work on you, and dominate person wouldn't work on you because magic would detect you or see you as an undead. So, but undead spells would work on you. Are there any ones that are really detrimental if you're undead? There's the ones that are beneficial if you're undead. I don't know. I mean, there's other features. Anyway, it's interesting. It's an interesting way to use it, right? So don't just blow past it and ignore that spell. So these interesting spells. I give it an A for tanks, frontliners, controller, support, scout, and survival and versatility functions. So, and that is all the dragon marks. So all of them, if you're a spellcaster, are at least worth considering and evaluating. And looking at your spell list versus what that you get from that one, and saying, do I get some interesting stuff here that I didn't have access to previously? It's worth it for that alone. Okay, these are all A ranked for spellcasters, A ranked Origin equivalent feats. Now they're not Origin, right? They're dragon marks. They're different, but they're Origin equivalent. Daggum, we're at an hour. I did not think it was going to take that long. So I'm going to cut this into 2 parts, all right? So I'm going to end it there, just all the dragon mark feats, which are Origin equivalent feats, and then I'll do part 2 where I'll cover the general feats, which are all, spoiler, not so great, and the, or most of them aren't, and the epic feat, which is amazing. So, all right, look for part 2 tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Remember to be cool with your friends when you play D&D, and catch you next time.